Welcome back. Victoria's high country is a place of beauty and mystery that remains reluctant to give up its secrets. It is a sort of remote wilderness that inspired Banjo Paterson's famous The Man from Snowy River. It is a region much loved by hunters, skiers, anglers, campers, bushwalkers, and the occasional gangland killer looking for a place to hide a body. When we drive through in air-conditioned and heated cars, along roads cut through bush and towering trees, it's easy to forget this terrain can swallow up the unprepared or the unfortunate. It's not unusual for people to get lost in Victoria's remote and rugged high country, but it is strange for them to remain missing after weeks of fruitless searching. Between early 2019 and 2020, there have been experienced hunters, well-equipped bushwalkers, campers and day trippers who have disappeared without a trace, often in completely unexplained and mysterious circumstances, and all within a 37-mile radius, leaving police and locals baffled. It is entirely possible people who become lost, disoriented or unwell can die in the Victoria High Country. But when the number of cases grows without any obvious reason in such a small geographical area and their bodies are never found, there will be talk of ominous factors, even if they're not based on any hard evidence. Locals in the area speculate about a regular visitor who disappears into the mountains for months at a time, known as Buttons, or the Button Man. He is a hard, expert bushman who earned his nickname from his habit of using deer antlers to make buttons and create large plugs for his ear piercings. He is reported to camp on the side of a remote mountain that lets him see anyone approaching. He uses snares to catch deer and hunts with expertly crafted Indigenous-style spears, which have been used by the Aborigines for generations. Many campers and hunters have stories of the Button Man approaching them at campsites once it gets dark, creeping up on them like a ghost. They describe him as around 70 years of age, with short grey hair, wearing dark jackets, and those he encounters call him bloody scary. But only a few reports of any threats or actual violence. He questions visitors on why they are in his vicinity, but never responds to questions about himself. They say he moves through the toughest terrain with the competence and stamina of someone half his age. At least 8 experienced bushmen have had encounters with the Button Man, with one saying he had a stare that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. They say no one knows he is near until he decides to make himself known. Disturbingly, a wildlife photographer spent days taking shots in the area near the Button Man's camp. When he returned home and downloaded his photos, there was one unexplained shot of the photographer asleep inside his tent. No one knows who took the shot. For reasons known only to himself, the Button Man builds rock pyramids in random spots and places piles of pebbles on roads so he'll know if a car has passed. Those spending time in the Australian bush, called bushies, have hidden firewood supplies in crevices, but returned and found their stash gone. They say someone must have been watching them carefully to know the location. An experienced hunter woke around 11 p.m. for a night hunt to find Button Man camped next to him. Some think he sees it as a harmless sport to hunt the hunters, proving he can approach even the best without them knowing. Police from the Missing Persons Squad have heard these stories too, which is why search and rescue police hiked into a remote area near Kingbilly Track, to locate the button man at his base, perched on a high point in the Alpine National Park. They say they were not there to accuse him of anything other than camping illegally, but to seek his help because he knows the area as well as anyone and sometimes observes hikers silently watching them pass. Russell Hill, 74, and Carol Clay, 73, disappeared on March 20th, 2020, from their campsite on Dry River Track, Wonnangatta. On this trip, Russell drove into the valley on a rough four-wheel drive path known as the Zika Spur Track, a road he'd built decades earlier while working as a contract logger. Russell picked Carol up from her house at Pakenham on the outskirts of Melbourne on March 19, and the pair headed east, bound for the remote Wonnangatta Valley. The valley lies in the dense bushland between the popular ski resorts of Mount Buller and Mount Hotham. You can only access the valley with a four-wheel drive, and in winter the roads are completely closed. Russell's family, including his wife, falsely believed he was camping alone. Friends say since Russell's retirement 2 years earlier, he'd been known to head off on solo road trips. It was only with his disappearance that those close to him learned that Carol, a former Country Women's Association president, was on some of those getaways. The pair have not been heard from since March 20th, when Hill made radio contact from a remote station in the Alps. During the call, Russell said he was having radio transmission issues. Robbie Ashland, a long-time friend of Russell, was the last person known to have spoken to him. They were part of an amateur radio club that would chat on their radios each day at 6 p.m. The group is made up of men who like camping, hunting and fishing, and use the radio to communicate when they are out of phone reception. When Russell didn't call into the radio club on the 21st, they weren't too concerned, but by the 23rd, Robbie reported him to the authorities. Knowing his friend, Robbie Ashland believes foul play was involved.
He's had a surprise visitor. He's been either jumped or attacked and carted out of there.
Russell's wife of 50 years says she had no idea he was on a trip with another woman.
I only last night spoke to Russell's wife again on the phone, and she'd like some answers too.
On March 27th, the couple's campsite was discovered. It had been burned out, and Russell's specially equipped Toyota camper utility was left scorched by fire and abandoned. His drone was also missing and was never recovered. Despite it being burnt, the vehicle was still able to be driven. Russell and Carol had full and happy lives at their respective homes and showed no indication of wanting to disappear. Police checks showed that they have not accessed their phones, credit cards or bank accounts. Despite repeated searches by the authorities, no evidence of their fate has been found, and they are presumed dead. If they were victims of an accident, how did their campsite, set up for comfort with a tent, outdoor shower, fold-up chairs and a table, just happen to catch fire? Hill had been in the area a week before the couple vanished, flying his drone near the Button Man's campsite. Did his activity cause someone to take action? His friend, Robbie Ashland, said it was on the King Billy track in 2019 that Russell and another friend had an encounter with the Button Man. He says the strange man was agitated and let them know he didn't want them to be camping there. In May 2020, police searched the area where Russell Hill and Carol Clay were last seen in a final effort before the snow. They found nothing. Police were asked if the pair, who have reportedly known each other for more than 20 years, could have run away together, but this was considered highly unlikely. They were two people, very close to their families and had good, independent, comfortable lives. On October 24, 2019, Niels Becker, 39, an experienced bushwalker, went missing on a solo 5-day hike in Victoria's Alpine National Park, which he had prepared for months. Police say Mr. Becker was well equipped for the hike and familiar with the area. He left the Upper Jamison hut on October 24th and 2 days later sent a message to his family from Gantner Hut that he was heading to his car at Mount Sterling, roughly 6 or 7 hours away. The last confirmed sightings was by the Button Man, who told police he saw him in his area. The trap took him past the Button Man's camp. The camp is at a spot known as the Crossroads, where bushwalkers in the know head because it is one of the few places with good radio reception. Police used over 70 people to search for Niels, but with no luck. Senior Sergeant Keegan said police had a few theories about what had happened to Becker. They say he may very well have walked out of the search area. There were some very cold nights and hypothermia may have kicked in. No one really knows why Conrad Whitlock, 72, drove into the high country in July 2019, nor why he left his white BMW in darkness on the side of Mount Buller Road, along with his jacket, mobile phone and keys. Conrad, from Sandhurst, south of Melbourne, was last seen by his wife as they climbed into bed at about 11:30 p.m, before she awoke at 5:30 a.m. to find him gone. He failed to arrive for work the next day, raising concerns about his whereabouts. Victorian Police Inspector David Brown said officers found Whitlock's BMW in working condition and with his jacket, mobile phone and car keys inside. Inspector Brown says at the moment there is nothing to indicate a reason for the vehicle to have stopped. The keys were inside, it started, it had fuel. So why Mr. Whitlock left the vehicle is simply unknown. Whitlock had been suffering from unexplained headaches for some time, but police say if he'd had a medical episode, he'd have been found in the area of his car. If it was a bizarre suicide, then a note for his family would seem likely. One theory is that he left his warm car for a toilet stop and decided he didn't need a jacket for such a quick break. He may have become disoriented in the dark and succumbed to the cold. David Perdue, 50, former Barwon prison governor, was a passionate bush hunter. On June 5, 2011, he went deer hunting with his brother-in-law in Victoria's Alpine National Park. He has not been seen since. Despite several searches of the area for months after his disappearance, there was no trace of Perdue or any of his belongings. There were many theories, including that he was killed over the murder of drug dealer Carl Williams, who had been ambushed and murdered inside Barwon more than a year before David disappeared. But it was thought unlikely that a hitman could creep up on an experienced hunter. Media reports also raised the possibility that Perdue had been in possession of sensitive police files, including allegations of police corruption when he went missing. The inquest into his death heard investigators had meticulously combed over Perdue's bank accounts, but they had not been touched since he vanished. Similar searches of his mobile phone records, as well as Centrelink, Medicare, Australia Post and betting agencies, had also failed to trace a link. The coroner found it likely that Perdue died from a serious accident in the national park or a medical cause, and there was nothing to suggest he met with foul play. The coroner is satisfied he is dead. but the cause remains unknown. Warren Meyer, 57, disappeared from Dom Dom Saddle, Fernshaw, on March 23, 2008. For Meyer, an experienced bushwalker, the 4-hour Easter Sunday hike was an easy one. The weather was fine. He was equipped with a phone, GPS and food and water. Yet he was never heard from again. Warren had set off at 7:45 a.m. and arranged to meet his wife and some friends for lunch. He failed to show, and his car was found parked and locked in the Dom Dom Saddle car park later that afternoon. Meyer ran a successful civil engineering consultancy business in Elwood and had been planning for retirement. There were reports of semi-automatic gunfire heard in the area on the morning Warren went missing, and that a large marijuana crop was found during the search for him. An escaped involuntary psychiatric patient was found roaming near the track where Meyer had been walking. Despite being investigated by local police, the Missing Persons Unit and Homicide Squad, no trace of him has ever been found. And despite the attention the disappearance garnered, the case went cold, and in December 2017, Coroner John Olley concluded that Mr. Meyer had died of unknown causes and that no further investigation was required. Meanwhile, there are sporadic sightings of the Button Man wandering into the nearby town of Mansfield to buy supplies. One Mansfield local says the man is a unique character who is extremely resourceful, slightly possessive of the area he sees as his patch, and usually only seen when he wants to be.
Everybody wants their own fictional story, but I think truth is more powerful than fiction. I think people have enjoyed the fact of making a boogeyman out of him. They really have. One TV company rang me up and wanted me to take them up and basically corral him in an interview, and I said, oh, no, I'm not going to do it. He's just a bloke that wants to be alone in the bush.
The Button Man may very well be just an innocent recluse who seeks the mountains for solitude and quiet. But that will not stop others from wondering whether the Button Man has sinister intentions and has been involved with some of the weird disappearances in the Victorian high country. Is it possible that a real-life version of the sinister Mick Taylor from the Australian horror classic Wolf Creek could be operating in Victoria's Alpine National Park? Whatever the cause of these mysterious disappearances, Wonnangatta Valley has become a dark tourism attraction, a spot where campers sit around a fire in the dead of night and scare each other with stories of ghosts, murder, unexplained disappearances, and the Button Man. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe for more murder, mystery and mayhem. Until next time.